Hello and welcome to Wisdom Wednesday with Iwa Sam. On today's episode of Wisdom Wednesday, we are sitting under seasoned leaders and seasoned authors to get wisdom. Now, Wisdom Wednesday is where we actually have series of book review sessions. Now, guess what? The book we are starting with today is Understanding Vision by Bishop David Oyedepo. Now, this book is actually a very interesting read, and not just interesting, it's packed with lots and lots of wisdom. Understand that there is a bigger copy of this book, so please, you would do yourself a favor by getting this book in the larger copy, or whichever copy you can get. You can find it in any bookstore. Understanding Vision by Bishop David Oyedepo. Read it, digest it, and not just reading it to have the head knowledge. How can you apply the lessons here into your daily life? So let's go. So before I go into the review proper, I just want to read, something at the back that really stood out for me when I got this book initially. Nothing gives meaning to life like vision. It heals a man of passive approach to living, delivers him from mediocrity. It offers clear sight into the future and energizes him to take guided strides to accomplishing it. Nothing gives meaning in life like vision. Vision is actually widely misunderstood. People take vision as so many things. It's your dream in the night. It's what a spiritual father prophesies over your life. Just several things. You can think of so many things that people have defined vision to be. But hey, this book actually brings a different perspective of what vision is and what you can do to achieve vision for your life. Remember, nothing gives meaning in life like having a vision. Now, it's one thing for you to know where you are going, but it's another thing and very important for you to know the things that you can do, the steps that you can take to accomplish that vision. Now, this book actually says a whole lot of things, and you know that I cannot say everything here in just a few seconds or few minutes. So please, you need to get this book and read and understand it so that you can have an idea of what God has called you for. It is very important for you to have a solid grasp of your end. When life comes to an end, what can people say about you? More importantly, what can God say about you? Did you actually live to fulfill God's vision over your life? Or were you just following the wind? Wherever the wind blows, you go. Now, one thing you should understand about vision here is that vision is actually what God has called you to do. Vision is identifying and discovering your purpose. For someone who wants to be very successful in life, I tell you, having vision is very, very important. In fact, I cannot stress or overemphasize how important having a vision is. One of the most unpleasant situations in life is when a believer tells you that I don't know where I'm going, I don't know what God's plan is for my life, I don't know what to do, I don't know. Please, bro, God has called you to be something. In the Bible, you have cases of people who God even called, right, before they were even born. Apostle Paul says, it has pleased God who has separated me from my mother's womb and has called me by his grace. In Jeremiah chapter 1 verse 5, the Bible also says when God was speaking to Jeremiah that before I formed you in the belly, I already knew you and I had ordained you. If you look at Adam, God already created the Garden of Eden before he created Adam to be in that garden. So there was already an assignment waiting for Adam before Adam even came to the garden. So God has an assignment for every one of us. So as a believer, most importantly, you cannot say that there is nothing God has called you to be. Now, this book actually gives us a different insight and perspective to what vision is. Now, according to this book, vision is the ability to see the future. It's the ability to see ahead. What is the thing that God has planned for your life? A lot of us must have heard it when Bishop David Oyedepo told us the vision that God showed him when God called him, to start a ministry. So that is something we should understand, that God has called you for something great. And I've noticed that a lot of people are even engaging in unnecessary competition. in the sense that God has called me to this place and I think it is higher than the status of the calling of the other person. With God, there is nothing like comparing status, right? If God has called you for a particular purpose and he has called me for a different purpose, I don't have to see my calling as higher than your calling, and you also shouldn't see your own calling as higher than my calling, because guess what? Eventually, everything that we are doing, if the vision is of God, is to give God glory. So every vision we actualize, irrespective of the differences in our path, is actually to give God ultimately the glory. We are born to fulfill a particular purpose, and the discovery of that purpose is what we call vision. So God has called you for something. You have to discover what God has called you for. There is a thin line between vision and ambition. Vision on one hand is God-given, ambition is man-made. So ambition is just like the normal things that most of us do. Okay, this is what I want to do. It's just a way of putting yourself in a path that can help you succeed better and greater than the others. But when it comes to vision, vision is what God has ordained. Vision is what God has given to you. Now, you cannot achieve the vision which is God-given without a form of divine strength and divine grace. So for your ambition, yes, you can be good, you can be an expert in a particular field, you can bag so many degrees, and of course have your attainment and all of that. But when it comes to vision, it's not a respecter of what you're good at. If God has called you and has equipped you for that, then of course you can succeed in that vision. Now, let me tell you, when God was looking for someone to bring out the children of Israel from the captivity in Egypt, guess who he chose? Moses. Moses was a stammerer. I hope you know. Moses was a stammerer. So you can imagine asking God, I am but a stammerer. How do I speak to Pharaoh? But God told him, go, tell them I am has sent you. Also, when God was looking for someone who would lead his people to build the walls of Jerusalem, guess who he chose? Nehemiah. Nehemiah was a slave in exile. It's not about being so qualified. It's not about being so brilliant or being so rooted in that particular field. God can call anybody. However, the first step for you to walk in the fulfillment of God's vision for your life is salvation. So you have to be a child of God so that you can hear properly when God is calling you to fulfill a particular thing. Now, another thing that this book made me understand is that your natural capability cannot equip you for the divine assignment of God. So yes, you can be someone who is very good at a particular thing, but if you are not backed up by God, because there is a level of divine strength, there is a level of divine grace that you need in order for you to fulfill that vision of God upon your life. So it's not a matter of, okay, I'm good in this, but you're good in it, but you're not blessing people. You're good in it, but you're not giving glory to God. Aside your natural capability, you should be backed up by God, because God enables the visionary to fulfill that vision. Now let's also talk about the importance of vision. Now this book actually talked about some importance of vision. Now the very first one is that vision gives you stability. Now, one thing about you knowing and you being sure of what God has called you to do is that you wouldn't be perching, you wouldn't be going in circles just to try and see what you're going to be successful at. And once you have that certainty that for a fact, this is what God has called me to do, it's going to reduce the amount of going here and there and just putting your hands in so many things without having a focus for your life. So vision gives stability. It helps you to stay on that track and fulfill what God has actually called you for. How would you know God's vision for your life? First of all, the major thing you are looking for is the fact that that vision is from God. So how would you know a vision is from God? You need to be in the place of constant communication with God, so that God tells you what to do. You hear the voice of God. God says, this is what I want you to do at this particular time, right? So, number one major characteristic of a vision is that it is God-given. Any vision that does not have its source from God it will eventually lead to destruction. It will lead to frustration. Now, another thing you should know is that when God gives a vision, He follows that vision with peace. It comes with peace. God is peace. If in the long run, right, you don't feel peace, you are restless, please, that vision is not of God. God is not an author of confusion. Any vision that God has placed in your hand, He creates a peaceful way for you to walk through and fulfill that vision. So by the time you see that you're beginning to get disturbed about that thing, just know that it is not of God. Now the Bible also backs this up. In the book of Psalms, it said, I will hear what God will speak, for He will speak peace. So when God speaks, He speaks peace. Now you may be asking, how can I know the area that God has called me into? What you understand is when God gives a vision, He backs it up with details. And that is why you need to be in constant fellowship, constant communication with God. Once He has given you something to do, He backs it up with what to do, the people to talk to. He gives you details of that vision. He downloads everything to you. You become wise. You begin to know what to do. You begin to take necessary steps. You begin to know who to talk to. Now, the vision that is from God will point you to a particular area. It's not everybody that will stand on the pulpit to preach. I hope you know. And then it's not even everybody that stands on the pulpit to preach that preaches the entire Bible. Now, not just preaching. You can have other areas, right, where you are expected to give God glory through the fulfilling of that vision. Aside from that, you also should have the zeal. You should have that passion. When you have a passion to, maybe you see a need somewhere, maybe you see a gap somewhere, and you just have the passion to do something, it is also pointing you to a particular area, right? It's probably where God is calling you to. Because you just have a passion, a constant, and don't forget, it should be of God, and then you should have peace in it. Another thing that this book actually opened my eyes to is the fact that there is a time element in vision. God does what He wants to do at His own time. It's not because you are in a hurry that you will not think that, okay, I'm in a hurry, God too shall now hurry. No. God will do what He wants to do at His own time. So there is a time for that download of vision. And then there is a time to plunge into action in taking that vision. Now, how would you know the time for takeoff? When you spend time with God. In fact, spending time with God gives you so much wisdom. It pertains to you. So you know what you want to do. You know what you are asking God for. And God knows what He wants to achieve with your life. To ascertain your area, right, you need to have zeal. You need to have that passion. You need to know that this is from God. And then you need to also spend time in the presence of God so that He can give you more details. And then you should also watch out for the timing. Because once God has given you something, it may not be immediately that He expects you to actualize that. It could be that, okay, He still wants you to develop in some certain areas before you eventually take off with that vision. So be very, very watchful for the timing. There should also be a speaking forth, right? So there should be a time when you begin to speak towards the achievement of that vision. You don't just speak your vision to anybody, because there are people who would actually destroy that vision. Know the people you are speaking to, and that is why I always go back to say, spend more time with God. Because when you spend more time with God, He would not bring you into confusion. Now, I hope with this part 1 of the Understanding Vision series, you are now informed about what vision is, about how to know your area. Now, on the next episode of this book series, we'll dive deeper into the book. And please leave your comments below if you have questions. If you also need me to direct you to where you can get a copy of this book, please let me know in the comment section. Follow us on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Stay tuned and see you next time. Bye.